It was on the 1094th day of my life, as Eleanor Vance's husband, that I told her I wanted a divorce. A brief, almost imperceptible flicker of confusion crossed her features before she smoothed it over with her typical, polished composure. "As you wish," she said, her tone so matter-of-fact it was as if we were merely discussing the brand of coffee for the morning. She didn't press for a reason. The following day, the 1095th, I behaved as though our conversation had never occurred. I saw her and our children off with the same warmth I always did. And then, without another word, I walked out of the Vance family home and did not look back. Initially, Eleanor and her family likely assumed I was having a momentary fit of pique, a childish tantrum that would burn itself out. But as the days bled into a week, then 2, they slowly began to sense that something was fundamentally wrong. The first to truly feel my absence was our younger son, Liam. At first, he was thrilled that the father who constantly monitored his screen time and vegetable intake was gone. But then came the day of the annual school fair. His mother, preoccupied with work, had forgotten to instruct the nanny to prepare his contribution. When all of his classmates gathered in a circle, their eyes wide with anticipation for the intricately decorated teddy bear sugar cookies his father famously baked from scratch for every occasion, Liam was left holding a plastic container of generic, store-bought biscuits. It was in that moment of collective disappointment that it began to dawn on him that perhaps his father's presence hadn't been so useless after all. The next to feel the shift was Alex, the older son. He had always harbored a deep-seated contempt for the man he believed had used deceitful means to usurp his biological father's place. Yet, one evening, as a thunderstorm rattled the window panes, he found himself instinctively leaning against his bedroom door, listening for the quiet, steady humming that always emanated from the study across the hall when I was working late. When the only sound was the drumming rain, a sharp, unfamiliar panic coiled in his stomach. Mr. Vance was the third. His family physician informed him that his blood pressure was climbing again, necessitating medication. It struck him with sudden clarity that it had been over 2 weeks since he had eaten one of the meticulously planned, heart-healthy meals Daniel always prepared for him. Even Eleanor's married younger brother, Connor, began to ask during his visits, with a casualness that failed to mask his concern when she was planning to bring his brother-in-law back home. The mentions of my name around the Vance dinner table grew more frequent. Some of the extended family started to gently suggest to Eleanor that a woman ought to be more gracious, that a small act of humility to coax her husband home would cost her no real dignity. Finally, Mr. Vance reached his breaking point. Over breakfast, he issued an ultimatum. "Eleanor, I understand you have your pride, but a husband and wife should not be estranged this way. If you find it too awkward to ask Daniel to return, then allow an old man like me to have a word with him." Eleanor's already distant expression turned several degrees colder. They all assumed she was too proud to lower herself and ask me to come back. The reality was she had already tried calling me the day after I left, only to be met with a block. The number she hadn't bothered to dial once in a decade was unreachable the one time she finally decided she needed it. The thought made the woman's face grow colder still. Her gaze swept over her 2 sons, who, though they remained silent, were watching her with expectant eyes. A wave of profound helplessness washed over her. "Dad, don't concern yourself with Daniel and me." "How can we not? You have 2 children. How can a man just abandon his responsibilities like that?" For the first time, she found her father's well-intentioned meddling to be incredibly grating. If you can get a hold of him, then by all means you try, she snapped, before turning on her heel and stalking away. It was only in that moment that she realized, with a belated shock, just how much Daniel could still affect her emotions. The three men left at the table stared at one another in stunned silence. The old man was the first to pull out his phone. I'm going to call him and ask if he still wants this family or not. But his only reward was a mechanical female voice informing him, the number you have dialed is not in service. The two boys, unable to sit still, tried as well, each receiving the same automated message. It was Alex who voiced their shared fear. He never misses our calls. What if something happened to him? Eleanor's hand froze on the doorknob of her study. A rapid, terrifying montage of news reports about accidents and foul play flashed through her mind. Her heart began to pound against her ribs. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Alex, my husband is missing. I need you to file a police report for me. She paused, her business instincts taking over. Wait. First, contact a few private investigators. This needs to be kept quiet. I'll send you his details in a moment. Eleanor pinched the bridge of her nose, forcing a steadying breath into her lungs. Meanwhile, I had settled in a small town in the south, renting a modest house with a small, sun-drenched yard. I was reclining in a wicker chair, savoring the rare coolness of a summer afternoon. The town was quaint and livable, surrounded by beautiful scenery year-round. I was entertaining the idea of opening a small flower shop. I had never been one for impractical things like flowers, but after 3 years as Eleanor's husband, tending to her gardens had unexpectedly cultivated a quiet passion in me. Eleanor located me on the evening of the 3rd day. Always immaculate pantsuit had a rare imperfection. Following my gaze, her eyes landed on a button on her cuff that was hanging by a single thread. A faint trace of embarrassment touched her cold face. Why didn't you come home? Her voice was as frosty as ever. I looked up at her, feigning surprise. Ms. Vance, as your soon-to-be ex-husband, I don't believe my presence is required in your home any longer. It was a strange sight. For the first time in our relationship, I saw a flash of genuine anger on Eleanor's face. Are our marriage and our family just some kind of joke to you? Her accusatory tone was beginning to wear on my patience, and my own irritation started to surface. On day 1094, I requested a divorce, and you agreed. Have you forgotten? Eleanor was clearly unaccustomed to arguing. She could never stick to the point. Did you just say, day 1094? A look of bewilderment crossed her face. I realized my mistake. Though I was prepared to tell them the truth to prevent the Vance family from clinging to me, I still made an attempt to bluff. Ms. Vance, just inform me when you're available. We can go to the courthouse at any time. She frowned, taking a moment to process my words before she spoke again. Everyone is having a difficult time adjusting since you've been gone. I just smiled, a detached and unconcerned expression. They'll get used to it soon enough. Eleanor let out a soft sigh. Dad's blood pressure is up, and the doctor is recommending medication. Alex's grades are slipping, and his teacher called to say he's been sleeping in class. I cut her off. Ms. Vance, that is your father and your son. What does any of that have to do with me? The woman looked at me as if she had never imagined I could say something so callous, her beautiful eyebrows knitting together even more tightly. Daniel, I think we need to have a serious conversation. If there has been some sort of misunderstanding between us, it's best we clear it up as soon as possible. A wicked impulse took hold of me. Mimicking Eleanor's own detached, corporate tone that she so often used with me, I said, Eleanor, I don't feel the need to explain all of my decisions to you. There are some things you simply wouldn't understand even if I did. I made a request, you agreed to it, and we both get what we desire. Isn't that the optimal outcome? Her expression shifted again. It was bizarre. In 3 years as her husband, I had seen a wider range of emotions on her face in that single afternoon than in all the preceding years combined. What about Liam? Your own son? Are you going to abandon him as well? At the mention of his name, this body's heart still gave an involuntary ache. I recalled how, in Daniel's final, fading days, this was the child he could not bear to let go of. But it is always the ones closest to you who possess the greatest power to wound you. I remembered the little boy, only 4 or 5 years old, declaring in his high, clear voice, "Mommy, I don't want the bad man to be my daddy. I want to be Mr. Sterling's son, just like my brother." The entire Vance family had been present when Liam said it. Alex had shot Daniel a look of defiant triumph. Eleanor looked as if she was about to scold him, but Mr. Vance and her younger brother stopped her, murmuring, "He's just a child. You can't get angry at him for speaking his mind." At that moment, I had thought to myself that, of course, one doesn't have to argue with a child. But what about the adults who coached and encouraged him? Daniel, however, said nothing. He simply helped Liam put on his coat, gathered the gifts they were bringing to the Sterling residence, and then stood by the door with the household staff, watching the family depart to celebrate Alex's birthday at Eleanor's ex-husband's home. Only I was close enough to see the telltale redness in Daniel's eyes the moment he turned away. Thinking of this, my expression hardened. The divorce agreement makes it perfectly clear. I want none of your family's money, your house, or any of your people. You, Eleanor, clearly not expecting my sudden vehemence, stammered for a moment before managing, "Daniel, what is wrong with you? We are a family. Whatever has happened, you need to tell us so we can resolve it together." A family? I savored the word ironically. She had so rarely considered me a part of the Vance family. Even when introducing me to outsiders as Mr. Vance, there was always a distinct, unspoken line drawn between me and them. What was my role in the Vance household? A high-end butler, perhaps. Mr. Vance, Alex, Liam, Connor, even her ex-husband. They were all integral parts of her family. I was the sole outsider. "Ms. Vance, did you ever genuinely see me as family?" I laughed, the sound full of sarcasm. "If my memory serves me correctly, every member of the Vance family holds at least 3% of the shares in Vance Corp. Your ex-husband, Mr. Sterling, and your sister-in-law both have them, correct? So let me ask you, as your current husband, a supposed member of your family, where are my shares?" Eleanor's hand tightened into a fist, a subconscious habit she had when under stress. "Daniel, you're different from them. You don't understand the business." "Is that so? Does one have to be a professional manager to own shares in their own family's company? Does that mean I am required to start making executive decisions at board meetings?" Caught off guard by my logical retort, her expression turned awkward for a fleeting second. "Daniel, I didn't realize you cared about these things. When we return, I can speak with them about allocating you some shares." I scoffed. "No need, Ms. Vance. You've missed the point entirely. I'm not negotiating with you. I am informing you that I am tired of playing the part of your husband. I don't want anything from you except a divorce. Please take your family and get out of my life." Eleanor's face instantly flushed a deep red. She must have been a person in a position of authority for so long that she had never been rejected so bluntly. She spun around sharply and left, throwing one last sentence over her shoulder. "See you at the courthouse, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." When Eleanor arrived home, She was so agitated that she had no desire to speak to anyone. She wanted only to sequester herself in her study. But Liam was not yet old enough to read the atmosphere. He missed his father. And so he asked directly, "Mommy, can you make Daddy come back? I want Daddy to take me to school, and I want to read picture books with him." Her older son, Alex, stood up as well. "Mom, is he okay?" She looked up at the three people who should have been asleep hours ago, all of them waiting up for her because of that man. Her irritation intensified. "You're all desperate for him to come back," she thought. "But to him you're nothing but annoying burdens." The woman opened her mouth, unsure of how to tell them that she was being divorced, that the man they were waiting for was never returning. "He's doing fine. He opened a flower shop in a small town down south," she said, choosing the easiest question to answer. "Then bring Daddy back, Mommy," Liam said with the pure innocence of a child. She suddenly felt a profound wave of exhaustion. Remembering the man's dismissive attitude, she steeled herself and said, "He's not coming back. We're going to the courthouse tomorrow to get a divorce." "What?" This time it was Mr. Vance who spoke. "How can you two be so irresponsible? Why get a divorce when everything is fine?" "Dad," she said, her voice sharp, "stay out of this." Thinking of how the man had looked at them with such utter disdain, she added viciously, "Besides, the way he became my husband was hardly honorable. It's for the best if he has finally come to his senses and stops clinging to our family." Mr. Vance seemed taken aback. After a long pause, he said, "Eleanor, he has actually been a very dedicated husband all these years. You should try to let go of what happened." But Eleanor, as if venting the humiliation she had endured earlier that day, continued, "It's better this way. With his character, I don't want him to be a negative influence on Alex and Liam. Dad, you have to think about Liam too. If he continues to live with him, how painful will it be for Liam when he eventually finds out his father is a man who would do anything to climb the social ladder?" She was about to continue her tirade, but Mr. Vance cut her off. "That's enough, Eleanor. Don't say another word." As far as Eleanor could remember, this was the first time her father had ever defended Daniel in her presence. Before she could react, tears welled up in the old man's eyes. "Eleanor, I should have told you this a long time ago, but, you reminded me today. I shouldn't have let my own selfish desires create a rift between all of you and Daniel." The words were clearly difficult for him to say, and the old man took a moment to compose himself. "You've always resented Daniel for drugging you at that party, forcing you into a marriage." He then looked at his beloved older grandson, Alex. "And Alex, for all these years, you've resented him for robbing your parents of the chance to reconcile, haven't you? That's why no matter how kind he was to you, how much he cared for you, you were always so cold to him. You wouldn't even call him Dad. The truth is, you don't know. He wasn't the one who drugged the drink. I was. The whole thing was a misunderstanding. In fact, Daniel was a victim too." All three of them stared, their eyes wide with disbelief. Alex could feel a slight tremor run through his body. He had truly, deeply hated that man. Because he had drugged his mother, ruining any chance of her getting back together with his father, destroying his chance of ever having a complete family again. But if it was all a misunderstanding, then everything he had done to that man over the years, he didn't dare to think about it. Mr. Vance continued, "Back then, I was actually trying to get Eleanor and Alex's father back together. Your divorce was so childish, and your relationship afterward wasn't bad. You're both stubborn and not the type to back down easily, so I thought I'd give you a push. At that party, I prepared the drug. It was meant for Eleanor and Alex's father. But by some cruel twist of fate, the drink that Alex's father was supposed to have was consumed by Daniel instead." At first, I also thought the man knew something and intentionally went along with the mistake. But later, I happened to be discussing it with a friend, and we pieced it all together. We realized that in our haste, we had made a terrible mistake and given the drink to the wrong person. But by then, you had already given birth to Liam. Selfishly, I was afraid he'd use his biological son to treat Alex poorly. I thought if he carried this stigma, he'd have to at least pretend to love Alex, so I kept this secret until today. "Grandpa," Alex said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. He held his head high, as if clinging to his last shred of defiance. Then why didn't he ever explain himself? Why was he willing to take the blame for all those years? He did explain. We just refused to believe him, Eleanor said, her voice strained. For some reason, she recalled a night long ago when she had had too much to drink and had pressed herself against Daniel. He had pushed her away, saying he didn't want to. She had been upset about something that day, and seeing the rejection in Daniel's eyes, she had instinctively lashed out. "Isn't this what you dreamed of? Climbing into my bed? Now that you've gotten your wish, what's with the pretense?" She clearly remembered how Daniel's eyes had darkened. He had said, "Eleanor, I like you, but I never schemed against you. I never wanted to be with you this way." She had just scoffed and continued what she was doing. Back then, she didn't believe him, and she didn't care about him. In all these years, had anyone in their family ever truly cared about Daniel? In their minds, they had already convicted him, already branded him as despicable. Only Liam was clueless. He asked timidly, "Does Grandpa mean that Daddy didn't break up my brother's mommy and daddy? Daddy isn't a bad person?" Alex couldn't hold it in any longer. He pulled his younger brother into a fierce hug. "Liam, what I told you before. No, everything we heard. What Grandpa and Uncle Connor said about your dad. It was all wrong. We were all lying to you. We all lied. Your daddy isn't a bad person. He's a very, very good person." Alex couldn't go on. He was choking on his sobs, unable to form a complete sentence. The next day at the courthouse, I saw the entire Vance clan assembled from a distance. I couldn't fathom why they felt the need to bring the whole entourage just for a divorce proceeding. As I drew closer, Liam broke away from the group and rushed to hug my leg. "Daddy, where did you go? I missed you so much." This child had never been particularly close to me. The Vances had raised him well, self-disciplined and polite. But with me, his own father, he never minced words. In the past, such an affectionate gesture would have left me feeling overwhelmed with a conflicted joy. But now, on day 1095, I no longer had to play along with this family's charade. I looked directly at Eleanor. "Your son is being unruly. Aren't you going to do something?" I saw the color drain from all their faces. Eleanor, likely worried about hurting her son's feelings in public, stepped forward and gently pulled him into her arms. "Daniel, Liam just wants to be close to his father. He hasn't done anything wrong." "Is that so?" A cruel impulse made me crouch down to look Finn directly in the eyes. But how could a bad man like me possibly deserve to be Liam's daddy? Liam's eyes instantly filled with tears, but he fought them back bravely. "Daniel, I know you've been wronged all these years, but you can't treat Liam this way. He's just a child." Eleanor's voice was thick with suppressed anger. I stood up, unconcerned. "It's fine. Let's just hurry and get the divorce finalized. Then I won't stand in the way of you finding him a good stepfather." "Daniel!" This time it was Mr. Vance. He always loved to play the part of the family patriarch around me, complaining that the tea was too cold or too hot, that the food was too oily or too bland. The old man never hesitated to try any method he could conjure to make my life difficult. I remember one winter he heard about some special preserved vegetable buns and made me cook them for him. I steamed batch after batch from morning until night, but he was never satisfied. Later, after the kitchen staff had gone home, I was dozing off at a table when I overheard a housekeeper whisper, "The old master is really giving him a hard time. Hasn't he steamed 7 or 8 batches already?" "I know, right? It's not the buns he's unhappy with, it's the person." How did I finally pass his test? That's right. In the dead of winter, I drove out to the countryside alone, went to 5 or 6 different villages, and finally bought the traditionally sun-dried preserved vegetables he wanted. Only then did he relent. I looked at Mr. Vance. "Save it, will you? Your former son-in-law isn't worthy of your lectures. Wait until your daughter finds you a new one. Then you can show off your authority." The Vances all looked as if they couldn't believe that the compliant man they could mold and shape however they pleased could possess such a backbone. Mr. Vance was too stunned by my disrespect to even muster anger. He just stared at me blankly. "Daniel, what's gotten into you, son? We're a family. What is all this talk about divorce? Don't say such unlucky things." I was growing tired of their melodrama. "Eleanor, we had an agreement yesterday. Let's go in, get this done, and from now on, we go our separate ways." I started walking toward the service hall, but Eleanor grabbed my arm. "What?" I snapped, turning back impatiently. "Daniel, don't be like this. You're not thinking rationally right now. And there's been a profound misunderstanding between us. Don't act on impulse." It was a rare occurrence for her to speak to me with such gentleness. But here she was, coaxing me at the courthouse entrance. I turned back and looked at her seriously. "Eleanor, are you insane? You get to discard a lowlife like me without spending a dime. Isn't that what you've always dreamed of? What are you hesitating for now?" Eleanor's brows were knitted together in a tight line. "Daniel, I learned some things yesterday. I admit I have treated you unfairly all these years. Please give me a chance to make it up to you, okay?" "No thanks. As for the past, I'll just write it off as a bad memory. As long as I don't have to face your family ever again, I'll wake up laughing in my dreams." "Daniel." A flash of shame crossed Eleanor's face. "Let's go home first. There are some things I need to explain to you." Her tone was firm, and she looked ready to have her security detail drag me away if I didn't comply. Fine. I had a few things I needed to make clear to them as well. In the Vance family study, Eleanor was unusually pleasant. "Daniel, regarding the party, we misunderstood you. I only found out yesterday that you were also a victim in that incident. I am so sorry." She sounded sincere, but I just laughed. A cold, empty sound. "You found out? From where? And since you know I was framed, who was the real culprit?" Eleanor looked away, her face etched with shame. Mr. Vance's face was beet red. "Go on. Weren't you going to tell me the truth and clear up the misunderstanding?" "Daniel, don't be so aggressive. What happened back then was a mistake. Nobody wanted it to happen." "Huh, a mistake? One mistake, and I have to live with the reputation of a self-debasing parasite slaving away for your family for a decade? You think one mistake erases all the cruelty your family has inflicted upon me?" "Eleanor, you don't actually believe that by marrying me, you did me some huge favor, do you? That now you can tell me your family misunderstood me and has decided to treat me better, and I'm supposed to drop to my knees and thank you with tears in my eyes? Wake up. This isn't a feudal drama." My relentless barrage left Eleanor speechless. "If you know what's good for you, you'll finalize this divorce with me. Or you can drag it out if you prefer. I have nothing to lose." As I was about to leave, Mr. Vance's aged voice spoke up. "Daniel, the Vance family has wronged you. It was me, this old fool, who made the mistake. I drugged you by accident. And then I let you suffer for all these years because I was afraid my own family would blame me. I am swallowing my pride now, and I apologize. Daniel, you love Eleanor so much. And you have Liam together. He's so young. Can you really bear to leave him? Daddy. Liam's crying started right on cue. I turned around and held up a hand, stopping the little boy from running to hug me. If you had said all of this to the Daniel from 3 years ago, he probably would have fainted from happiness. But now, all I feel is that your family is disgusting and hypocritical. All right, since we've reached this point, I might as well tell you the truth. I looked at the confusion etched on the faces of the Vance family and pulled my new ID from my pocket. Marcus? Eleanor read the name on the card. You changed your name? As you can see, I'm not Daniel. My name is Marcus. About 5 years ago, I was in a car accident. When I woke up, I found myself in Daniel's body. I watched him get enslaved and humiliated by all of you, especially you. My gaze fell on Alex, and my voice turned to ice. You are genuinely the cruelest child I have ever encountered. Alex's body trembled. I ignored him and continued. This went on for 2 years. Then, one day, Daniel said to me, Marcus, I can't go on anymore. I'll give you my body. Please, can you just look after them for 3 years for me? That's when I learned his depression had become so severe, it was causing debilitating physical symptoms. He was starting to have self-destructive urges. He knew he could no longer be a proper husband to you, Eleanor. But Liam was too young to be without a father. So he came up with this deal with me. I paused, watching the various expressions of shock and disbelief play across their faces. What? You don't believe me? Think I'm spinning a tale? I tossed a thick stack of medical records onto the mahogany table. Take a good look. See how your family drove Daniel to his death. None of you should ever show your faces to me again. Honestly, if it weren't for my deal with Daniel, I wouldn't want to spend a single second with you people. The whole family, from the old to the young, there's not a single good one among you. I walked out of the Vance house without a shred of reluctance. Mr. Vance's face was a mask of terror. Eleanor, is what he said true? Is Daniel a ghost? Is he going to come back and get revenge on us? He trembled as he held on to Alex. Eleanor, should we find a priest or someone to perform a ritual? Eleanor's heart was a chaotic maelstrom of emotions. She knew none of them had particularly liked Daniel, but she never imagined their collective dislike and mistreatment were severe enough to drive him to suicide. Dad, Eleanor forced the word out of her dry throat. There are no ghosts. Daniel was probably just sick. I'll have a specialist review his medical records. She fled the room. At that moment, Marcus's words echoed in her mind. So that's how he saw them. He hated their family that much. This man she had always looked down upon, whom she had always considered a stain on the Vance family name. In his eyes, they were the most disgusting and ugly people in the world. She was efficient. It wasn't long before she received a preliminary diagnosis from a doctor. According to the records, Daniel developed severe depression shortly after you gave birth to Liam. But back then, none of us noticed. Later, probably as a form of self-preservation, he developed a second personality, Marcus. Eleanor spoke with great difficulty, explaining the situation to her father and older son. This personality, Marcus, is completely different from his primary one. He doesn't love me, and he doesn't like anyone in the Vance family. Daniel's primary personality must have sensed Marcus's hostility toward us, so he never allowed him to take control of the body. But, Eleanor swallowed the lump in her throat, taking a long pause before continuing. Later, his symptoms became more and more obvious. Heart palpitations, insomnia, trembling. In the end, after Liam almost caught him attempting to take his own life, he got scared. He loved his son so much. He couldn't bear to imagine the psychological trauma it would cause if Liam were to find him dead one day. But no one was there to help him. We, his so-called family, didn't even notice his pain. No, how could we not have noticed? We just grew accustomed to ignoring him, belittling him, and step by step, we pushed him toward a dead end. He could have recovered if he had just left us back then and found a better environment. But he didn't. I suppose it was because he couldn't let go of Liam. He made a deal with Marcus. He let Marcus take his place, to be there for Liam as he grew up. The price was his own permanent disappearance. By the time Eleanor finished, her voice was so hoarse she could barely make a sound. She pressed her clenched fist against her lips, suppressing a sob. She remembered Marcus's insistence on day 1095. 3 years. That was the 3 years Daniel had bought with his own life. And what had they done? It wasn't as if she hadn't noticed her older son's cruelty toward him, the dead insects left in his room, the handmade crafts he had worked so hard on deliberately broken. And that winter, not long after Liam was born, when Alex had pushed him into the outdoor swimming pool. Thinking back on it all now, if her son had treated anyone else in the family that way, hell, even a complete stranger, she would have scolded him and taught him a harsh lesson. But with Daniel, she had watched coldly as her son's pranks grew more and more vicious. She had even thought to herself, "This is the price he has to pay for scheming his way into marrying me." She looked at her father, a man who, despite not being a great intellect, had always been kind and gentle. Yet it was this same old man who would tear up at the slightest hardship of a stranger, who had treated Daniel with such biting cruelty. When Liam was just learning to talk, she had caught her father deliberately calling Daniel a homewrecker in front of him. Later, their family took it even further. Her father intentionally kept Liam from getting close to Daniel, scolding him in front of the child, leaving him with no dignity in his own son's eyes. Even though Daniel had been so good to them after marrying into the family, he remembered everyone's preferences, was respectful to her father, cared for Alex, and even had a child with her. How could they have enjoyed all he gave while being so relentlessly cruel to him? "Mom, please stop." Alex was the first to break. "No, he can't be gone. He was so resilient. No matter what I did, he never got mad at me. How could he be gone?" Alex was crying, but she felt none of her usual sympathy. They were all sinners. They all deserved to be tormented by their conscience. My flower shop is now open for business. Every day I go to my garden to look at the vibrant colors. When the sunlight filters through the greenhouse glass and fills the room, my mood instantly lifts. The town attracts a lot of tourists, and sometimes my garden hosts a few guests. I love sipping tea and listening to interesting people tell me about their travels. Once, I had just seen off an elderly couple who had traveled to over 20 countries after retiring. I was doubled over with laughter at the funny stories of their attempts to learn English. When I turned around, I saw Eleanor and her 2 sons. My expression instantly turned cold. As I was turning to close the gate, Eleanor reached out and stopped me. "Daniel, we came to apologize today." Her face was full of sorrow, and the 2 kids beside her looked as if their world had ended. I didn't even want to look at them. "Your Daniel has been dead for 3 years. If it weren't for me, the grass on his grave would be taller than your son by now. And you choose now to apologize?" "Daddy?" Liam rushed forward and hugged my leg. "Daddy's not dead. Daddy, do you not want me anymore?" I glanced at the child, the harsh words I was about to say getting caught in my throat. "Liam, be a good boy. Just live with your mother from now on." I gently pushed him away. As I was about to close the gate, I heard another, "Daddy." It was Alex. I yanked the gate open, my eyes like daggers as I stared at him. "You shut your mouth. What damn right do you have to call him Daddy?" Alex seemed terrified by my reaction. Even Eleanor tried to step between us. I advanced on him, step by step. "You, the main culprit who drove him to his death. What right do you have to call him Daddy?" The boy was frozen in place, stunned. "How did it feel? Was it wonderful, dissecting his little goldfish with your own hands? Hiding in the shadows, watching him suppress his grief, watching the light in his eyes slowly die out? Did that give you a sense of accomplishment? You're a little hero, aren't you? You personally destroyed his last bit of hope and then placed it on his pillow. Weren't you happy?" Eleanor came to pull me back. "Marcus, that's enough. He's just a child." "A child? Oh yes. He's your family's good little boy, isn't he? He knew his stepfather wasn't welcome. He knew that no matter how vicious he was, no one would ever stand up for him. So your good son, in Daniel's most helpless and painful moment, destroyed his last will to live. I didn't know. I really didn't know he was sick. I didn't know the goldfish were so important to him." Alex broke down, sobbing. "You knew. How could you not have known?" I stared at him viciously. Did you not know his situation in the Vance family? They called him Mr. Vance, but not a single person respected him or cared about his feelings. Even the clothes and jewelry in his closet were just borrowed props to keep up appearances. His depression was so severe back then. He tried to save himself. He wanted to get a pet of his own, something to keep him company every day, to talk to. But in your Vance family, in that soul-crushing place, what was he allowed to have? Cats and dogs were out of the question, of course. He knew that if he brought home a dog or a cat, Alex would find a way to get rid of it the next day. So after thinking it over, he secretly kept a fish in his room. It was silent, wouldn't bother anyone, and wouldn't be discovered. But even then, your good son wouldn't let him be. He snuck into his room, brutally dissected those two fish, and left their bodies on his pillow. Tell me, Eleanor, isn't he your good son? Isn't he a fine descendant raised by the Vance family? I couldn't help but laugh out loud, and as I laughed, I felt something cold and wet on my face. Eleanor fled with her two sons in tow. Later, I received the signed divorce papers from Eleanor by mail. She included a check for a large sum of money, almost half her entire fortune. After that, I would see Liam every school vacation. He would just stand there in the distance, sometimes looking at me, sometimes at my flower shop. But he never came inside. I think he probably knew that I didn't want to see any of the Vances ever again. And that included him. Epilogue. My name is Alex. For the first 15 years of my life, I hated Daniel. For the rest of my life, I have been atoning for that hate. The day my mother took Liam and me to apologize to him, just as he was about to close the gate without even looking at me, on some strange impulse, I called out the word Daddy. And it was that one word that condemned me to a lifetime of guilt. That was the first time I ever called him Daddy. It was also the last. From that day on, the man who had loved me for 10 years never gave me another chance to call him that. When we got home that day, my mother punished me severely. The belt hurt as it struck my skin, but I felt it wasn't enough. What was this pain compared to the hurt I had inflicted on him? Later, I cried. My mother knelt down on the floor and cried with me. She said it wasn't my fault, that she was the real culprit. Daniel had died because of her indifference and neglect. She was the one who most deserved to die, the one who most needed to atone. After that day, everyone changed. Grandpa announced he was going to a monastery in the mountains to become a monk. Mom didn't stop him. The day Grandpa left, he hugged Liam with red-rimmed eyes, but Liam pulled away. I know Grandpa was heartbroken, but this was the sin we had all committed. Liam changed too. He became quiet and stopped clinging to me. I know I was one of the people he hated. I was the one who made him lose his father. Mom changed too. Although she went to work, ate, and slept as usual, her face never again showed any sign of ease or relaxation. Once, I saw her in the garden burning the diaries Daniel had left behind. She said they were too heavy, that it wouldn't be good for Liam to see them someday. When she was done, I saw her cough up a mouthful of blood. I changed too. I lost the right to be a child. My mother and my younger brother became my responsibility. Everyone praised me for growing up, for becoming a responsible man, just like my mother. But I know I'm no man. I'm the murderer who killed Daniel. I never saw Marcus again. Mom actually took my brother to see him every holiday. They would just watch from a distance, checking to see if he was doing well, if he was happy. Oh, and his flower shop later became a guest house. Mom said he met a lot of people from all walks of life that he could talk to. He ran his business casually, closing for half the year because the owner was off traveling with friends. And so, I think away from the Vance family, he was probably his truly happy self. He was finally no one's husband, no one's father. He was finally free to be himself.